This is what we are going to build today. It's the QX80 from Eachine. It's an FPV quadcopter with an FPV camera and transmitter mounted on top of it. We fly it with a Spektrum Satellite receiver and a 1S battery. It's a lot of fun flying and it's really cheap as well. Alright, today I'm gonna unpack the Eachine Tiny QX80 FPV racing quadcopter. It's the almost ready to fly kit from Banggood. It's $56 and it's a little bit different to the QX90 because it's a little bit smaller and the camera is mounted in the front and not in the middle. Usually comes in the same packaging from Banggood. And yeah, this is the manual. We have two sets of propellers. What else? We have a camera and the transmitter, video transmitter. This looks like the frame. Two batteries. Some cables for motors, of course, and the flight controller. This is a tiny version of the F3 SP Racing flight controller, which supports DSM and DSMX receivers, which is really great. Usually most of the people use FR Sky receivers or the Fly Sky from Banggood. Today I want to show you how to use Spektrum Satellite to control your tiny quadcopter. So now that we unpacked everything, just look at the batteries first. The batteries are 1S, which means it's got one cell with 3.7 volts, 600 milliampere hours. We got two of them, and we got a charging cable. Like you can put both of them at the same time. We also have the flight controller, which is it's not pre-soldered with all the cables, so you have to solder all the cables yourself. This shouldn't be that hard. I'm going to show you how to do that a little bit later. We also get a really nice description where to solder what, the motors and the power, and we got your ports here and here. We got a buzzer as well, and this is for the receiver for the DSMX or DSM2 receivers, such as the Spektrum Satellite. We also got this is the camera with the video transmitter. It's a tiny camera. And the motors, of course. A little bit magnetic, yeah. Some sticky pads to stick the batteries or the camera on it. And I just opened one set of the propellers yet because we only need one at the moment. And the frame, of course. This is the frame. I already started to assemble the frame, and it's harder than it looks actually, because the openings here, as you can see, where this has to go in and this one, they're really tiny and tight, so it's actually hard to get them in. So make sure you have something like this for a hard surface, and you can punch it a little bit, and just be careful and you won't break it. Alrighty, looks quite good already, I'd say. These come in there to fix the motors. Like this, yeah. This is the easy part. Yes. Next we have to stick in the motors. I already started with the first two motors. This is actually way easier than assembling the frame. Just get in the cables and hold the rub a little bit and just punch it in and push it all the way down. There you go. The last one. hold the rubber a little bit, move it around and punch it in. There you go. This is really tight as well here, see? So we have to be really careful to not damage the motors. But we have to also punch it in a little bit more. Nice, this looks good. Alright. This is one of the Spektrum DSMX satellites you can buy from Banggood for $6, and it comes with a cable as well. As we need it really light, we get rid of the plastic casing because we don't need that. Save a few grams. Alright, get this off. Alright. So, this is really light. Now we have to solder this cable onto the DSMX receiver input. Let's do that. As you can see in the manual, this one is 3 volts, the middle one is ground, and the one on the left side is the serial data. And orange is 3 volts, put it like this, ground and serial data. So we just get a little bit of flux over here. There you go. Then punch it in. Like this. And solder it down on the back side. There you go. Now it's time to start to solder on the power cable and the camera. As we're using a 1S battery with 3.7 volts, we can use the same port where the battery goes in for the camera. So this is the next step. Just make sure you watch the manual where the plus and the minus pole are. This is plus and this is minus, which is the ground. Oh, here you go. Plus and minus. How you do it really doesn't matter. I decided to solder the battery connector on the bottom because I'm gonna place the battery in the bottom and the camera on the top. Just make sure the camera also has the right polling, like plus and ground over here, positive and ground. The next step are the motors. This is actually different as the manual says. The manual, as you can see here, says that we have motor 1, 2, 3 and 4. 4 motors. M1, M2 and 3 and 4. On our flight controller we see we have more than that. We have, let's turn it the right way, motor 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. This lets me assume that you can use the F3 SP Racing flight controller miniature from this one also for a small hexacopter. But for this copter we only need motor 1, 2, 3 and 4. Let's start putting that together. Just before you do that, make sure you check the manual which cable is plus and which cable is minus, and on the flight controller as well. If we check it on the flight controller, the one on the right side is the ground and the one on the left side is plus. Ground plus, here as well, ground plus, ground plus. And I'm assuming that black is ground and white is plus and blue is ground and red is plus. If you check that in the manual, it turns out I was right. Alright, let's start soldering that on. Well, how you solder the motors on the flight controller really doesn't matter. If you stick the cable through the little holes or if you put it on top of it. I always like to start to put a little bit of soldering tin on the holes like this. Got one here, got one here. And then just put it on top of it because it makes it so much easier. And on the other side as well. I should definitely get a little smaller soldering iron for stuff like that. I thought about that for quite a few times already, but couldn't be bothered buying one. Right, once we're done here, we start getting the motors ready. This is the front, because there will be the mounted camera, and as you can see the little arrows over here, this symbolizes the flight direction. So this will be motor number 2 because it's in the front, and it's harder than it looks. We said on the right that we have the ground, like so. And positive on the left. This is really annoying, tiny cables. I'm not used to this with the camera. I'm a little bit nervous, as you can see. I did it, nice. And this one as well. Negative. Positive. Alright, we got 2 of them. Negative. This is really bad. Sorry guys for the bad light. Positive. And one more. This time we're gonna start with the positive. Positive. And the last one. Come on. Negative. Nice. All done. So before you plug in the USB cable or the battery, make sure you check everything. Double check is better, or even triple check is better than not checking, because at some point, if you don't check your wiring, you will burn something. You will fry your ESCs or the flight controller or something else. So please take some time, just a few minutes, and double check if the input voltages are right, the outputs polling are right, and here as well. Just make sure everything is fine. You can also get a multimeter and check if you have a short circuit somewhere over here. Just put it on the plus and a minus pole and see if there is a short circuit. This would be really bad. This would fry your board immediately. So make sure you have no short circuits, and once you have that, you're good to go to plug it into the computer. Alright, so now we're at the computer. One thing before we start, as we're using a DSMX Spektrum Satellite as a receiver, I hope you're familiar with these and know how to bind the binding process to your transmitter. If not, there are tons of videos, but you need to bind them with a receiver before you solder it on it, or you have a second cable. It is a really easy process. Just make sure you bind it to your transmitter before you put it all together, because now we're gonna check if it works. Yeah, plug in the USB cable. This looks good. And we have power on our receiver. This is really nice actually, because sometimes you need to plug in the battery, but we don't. The steady light, the steady orange light, means that this satellite is already bound. I have my Spektrum DX7S already switched on, and yeah, it recognizes it. Once you're in clean flight, make sure you select the right COM port and press connect. Once it's connected, you can move your flight controller around and see if all the directions are right. Looking good. Now press ports on the left side. If you're using a Spektrum Satellite receiver, as I do, make sure on your 3 serial RX is enabled. If you use S-Bus, make sure your 2 serial RX is enabled. Press save and reboot. Now that the flight controller has rebooted, go to configuration. On configuration tab, in receiver mode, make sure you select the radio button RX serial, because we're using a Spektrum Satellite. Also, make sure you select Spektrum 2048 for the DSMX satellite receiver. You can disable the other functions like the black box or the telemetry or the transponder, because we won't need that. Save and reboot again. Rebooted again, we go to receiver. At the receiver channel map, we have to select our Spektrum, because then it actually links all the channels to the right channels. Press save. Now, as we already connected the satellite to the board, we're able to control throttle, yaw, roll, and pitch. We also have 2 different aux channels, like aux 1 and aux 2. Next, go into modes. As we want to arm the copter, add some range over here. Auxiliary 1 is the switch we want to arm the copter with. So we move the sliders over here, because this is the arm position and this is not. Hit save. Now if we flip the switch, we can see the motor is arming icon over here, and if it turns green, it means the motors are armed. We also want to change between angle mode and acro mode, so we add on the second switch, on auxiliary 2, we add range for angle mode. It's a 3-position switch. Horizon mode. And on a 3rd position, nothing is selected, which means the copter is in acro mode. Hit save again and test it out. Arm, horizon, acro. Looking good. This is really all you need to get the copter flying. If you want to play around with some different features, go on YouTube and look some videos up on how to do that. But for this, that should do it. So now that we are back at the workstation, there's one thing left to do. Cable management, putting all the parts onto the frame, camera, flight controller, and receiver. And yeah, make sure you have something to strap on your battery and put on the propellers. We got the propellers on it, we got the camera, flight controller, and the Cs, and the battery, and the satellite. Make sure the propellers are mounted right. So make sure this is the right it has the right spinning direction. This is how it looks when it's done. So make sure you find a safe place to fly and you take it outside and test it out.